Okay, so what are my solutions for x in that first one? What are the solutions? There's two solutions there. What are they? Good. Yeah, x equals -2 and x equals -6. Again, I can factor this side of my equation so that I have x plus 6 times x plus 2. And if those two things multiply together give me 0, then that means either x plus 6 needs to be 0 or x plus 2 needs to be 0. And if x plus 6 equals 0, then x has to be -6. If x plus 2 is 0, then x equals -2. Let's do b together. So again, I start by factoring this side of the inequality, or this side of the equation. So first think to yourself, what times what is going to give you x squared? X and x. That part's easy. Then we think, what two numbers multiply together to get to 24? 6 and 4. Could that get me to 10? Yeah, if I made both of them negative, right, I would get to -10. But if I took -6 and multiplied it by -4, what would I get? A positive 24. So 6 and 4 doesn't work this time. What else could work? Good, 12 times 2, right? Because I can make that a -12 and a positive 2. -12 plus 2 gives me -10, and -12 times 2 gives me -24. So I'm going to make my 12 negative and my 2 positive. So now what would x equal then? -2 and positive 12, right? Same number, opposite sign. So x can equal positive 12 and x can equal -2. Okay, let's do this last one as well. Same thing, right? 0 equals, and now I'm going to factor this side. But what's different about C than A or B? Yeah, there's this number out in front, right? But for this one, it's not so bad because it's just a 2. And there's only one way to multiply together to get to 2. 2 times 1, right? So my first terms need to be 2x and 1x, or just x. 2x and x. And then what about my last number? How do I multiply together to get to 3? Yeah, 1 times 3. But am I going to do 1 and 3 or 3 and 1? How do we know which way to go? Why? And why do we want that to happen? Good, yes. So I want my 2x and my 3 to multiply, and I want the 1 and the x to multiply, because then I end up with 6x and 1x, which gives me this 7x, right? So it's going to be 2x plus 1, x plus 3. 2x plus 1, x plus 3. So then, same thing. It's just a teeny bit different because I've got this 2 now. I've got 2x plus 1. That could equal 0. Or x plus 3 equals 0. Okay, let's do this part first because that's easy. What does x have to be? -3. And then here, what do I need to do to solve for x? Move the 1. Good. Subtract 1 from both sides. And I've got 2x. 2x equals -1. And then what? Divide by 2, divide by 2. So x is equal to -1/2. Okay. Do you guys remember how these solutions show up on the graph? Show up on the graph. that a little better. For part A, what do I know this point is? Yeah, that's -6 and -6, 0, right? And this point here is -2, 0, right? Our solutions here tell us where the x-intercepts are, where the parabola crosses the x-axis, okay? So we're going to look at one other way of solving quadratic equations, and it's not completing the square. I'm not going to teach you that. But I am going to teach you how to use what's called the quadratic formula. So you'll need to flip over onto the back of this paper. We're going to just skip number 2. If you are really interested in learning completing the square, I can teach you, but I'm not going to test you on it. Okay. We are going to learn this, though, our quadratic formula, which looks really big and scary, but it's really not that bad. Okay. Everybody should have a calculator, though, because that will help for sure. Okay. So remember that general form looks like that: ax squared plus bx plus c. So if we know that that's the general form, we can identify what is a, what is b, and what is c. So can you guys fill in number 3 there? Just tell me what's a, what's b, what's c. What's a, what's b, what's c. What's a, what's b, what's c. What is a in part A? There's no number in front of the x squared, so what is a? 1. 1. If you want, I think there's colored pencils out. If you want to use a different color for each letter, you could do that too. You don't have to. And then what's B in part A? 8. And C? 12. And let's just jump right in to this part down here. So this is the quadratic formula. And the quadratic formula tells us what the solutions are. So right over on the other side, we found out x equals -6 and x equals -2. I'm going to end up with 2 answers for x, 2 solutions for x when I plug in a, b, and c in for a, b, and c. Okay, so let's try it out. I am plugging in, right, I have x equals -b. That's add or subtract. So one of my solutions I'm going to add. For the other solution, I'm going to subtract. The square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. And again, I know it looks like a lot. All you're doing is plugging in a where you see a. So let's do that first. I'm taking 1 and I'm plugging it in here. And I'm plugging it in down here. And then I'm taking 8. 8 is b. So I'm going to plug in 8 right here and right here. And then c, my 12, goes right here. Do you see how I did that? Okay. Huh? Because I have b and then b again. Okay. Now we have to simplify. So I think you can plug this in your calculator, but you got to be really careful with your positives and negatives. So I think it's best to simplify it by hand first, and then we can use our calculator if we need to. So start by simplifying what's underneath the square root symbol. Okay, so I'm going to leave my -8 alone. I have add or subtract. Now I have this square root, and let's figure this out. What's 8 squared? 8 squared. 64. And then minus 4ac. 4 times a, 4 times 1 is just 4, and 4 times 12 is 48. Okay, and then I'm going to divide everything by 2a, but a is 1, so that's just 2. Okay, let's continue simplifying. I have negative 8 plus or minus the square root of 64 minus 48. What's 64 minus 48? Divided by 2. What's the square root of 16? So that's 16 squared. What's the square root? 4. 4 times 4. 8 plus 8 gives us 16, right? 4 times 4. So on your calculator, you do second and then the squared button. Want me to show you? So you do this. Second, squared, and then 16. Okay? Okay, so now we have, this is just kind of where it gets weird. Negative 8 plus or minus 4 divided by 2. Right? You remember, we have 2 solutions to these kind of problems. One of my solutions is going to be negative 8 plus 4 divided by 2. And the other is going to be negative 8 minus 4 divided by 2. So what's negative 8 plus 4? Negative 8 plus 4. What's negative 4 over 2? And then what's negative 8 minus 4? Negative 12. What's negative 12 divided by 2? Negative 6. So we got the same, 2. So we got the same answer as we did on the other side. Okay. So quadratic formula is kind of, let's just do another one and then I'll kind of explain. So let's try part B. Part B. So let's come up here. What's my A? What's the value for A in part B? 1. What about B? Negative 10. Good, negative 10. And what about C? Negative 24. Okay, I'm going to plug in 1 for A. Got A here and an A down here. Plug in negative 10 for B. Negative 10 and negative 10. And then C is negative 24. So now we simplify. And I start with what's underneath the square root first. So think about what's negative 10 squared. It's negative 10 squared. Make sure you put the negative 10 in parentheses before you square it if you're using a calculator. A 100. Good. So I now have 100 minus 4 times 1, that's 4. What's 4 times negative 24? Negative 96. So if I'm doing 100 minus negative 96, what happens with minus and negative? Good. So under my square root, I have 196, right? 100 plus 96 is 196. So if I rewrite this, okay, ooh, here I have a negative negative as well. What happens there with that negative negative? Positive. Yep, I have 10, and then it's going to be plus or minus the square root of 196 divided by 2. And this is where it kind of splits into two different solutions. So it's going to be 10 plus the square root of 196 divided by 2, or 10 minus square root of 196 divided by 2. So what is the square root of 196? 14. So one of my solutions I find by doing 10 plus 14. What's 10 plus 14? 24 divided by 2. 2 or 12, yes. So 12. And then 10 minus 14 divided by 2. So what's 10 minus 14? Negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. And again, that's the same answer we got on the other side. Positive 12, negative 2. Let's try one last one. What's my A in part C? What's A? 2. What's B? And C? Okay. They don't give us a template this time, so we got to just write it out. So I start with negative B. Negative B. Negative 7. Add or subtract square root of B squared. So 7 squared minus 4AC. So 4 times 2 times 3. Divide all of that by 2A. Then we simplify. So I'll leave the negative 7 alone. Right, I'm going to add or subtract, and let's figure out what's underneath this square root symbol. So what's 7 squared? 49. And then 4 times 2. 8, and 8 times 3. 24. Divided all by 2 times 2. 4. Okay, now let's do the subtraction. What's 49 minus 24? 25. So I have negative 7 plus or minus the square root of 25 divided by 4. And that's where we split it off into our two different solutions. So what's the square root of 25? 5. So one of my solutions will be negative 7 plus 5 divided by 4. And the other solution will be negative 7 minus 5 divided by 4. What's negative 7 plus 5? Negative 2. And negative 2 divided by 4? Yeah, it's negative 1/2. Negative 1/2. And then negative 7 minus 5? Negative 12 divided by 4? Good, negative 3. Okay, so again, same answers as what we got on the other side. And, okay, so we can solve a quadratic by factoring. What do you think is easier, solving by factoring like we did on the front, or using the quadratic formula? You think the formula is easier? Yeah? It kind of depends on the situation though, right? Some are really easy to factor, like that first one was really easy to factor, x plus 2, x plus 6. My answers are -6 and -2. That's it, right? I can do that really, really quick. But sometimes, especially when a is bigger than 1, it can be a little challenging to factor, to find out what the numbers are to factor. And that's where the quadratic formula comes in handy, okay? We were using the quadratic formula for these problems. It's like using a snow shovel to eat your cereal in the morning. It's like overkill a little bit, but it's to just show you another method of solving a quadratic. And this is nice because you can use it anytime. Even if it doesn't factor, you can still use the quadratic formula to solve. Okay, so solving by quadratics is good when it's easy to factor. But the quadratic formula is good for numbers that are hard to factor. And that's usually when a is greater than 1, when a is not 1. Okay. All right. Let's flip to the other side. Flip to the other side and take just a couple of notes there. Okay. So I want to solve with the quadratic formula. For quadratics in general form, so ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. For quadratics like this, the solutions can be found with x equals -b. Add or subtract square root b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. Okay, you've got a couple steps to follow. So first of all, make sure that the quadratic equals 0, because it wouldn't work if it was equal to 36 or something. You'd have to make it equal to 0. So make sure quadratic equals 0. And then, like we did on the other side, identify what A, B, and C are. And once you've figured out your A, your B, your C, you can substitute it into the formula. Sub A, B, C into formula. And if you want to just plug it, you can plug it right into your calculator. Just make sure you're using parentheses. I can show you what that looks like too. And then the last step is just to simplify. Right? Start with what's under the square root, and then you kind of split it off into the two parts, either adding or subtracting. Okay? So you can try numbers 1, 2, 3. Show your work on there too.